How would you like to be able to become the best you in a committed relationship? We have Bill Simpson, who's going to tell us how he's a relationship coach for men. So, Bill, tell us, how can any entrepreneur, any man become the best version of himself in a committed relationship? Welcome to Awakened Titans podcast with Lily Patrascu. Mind-blowing conversations with influential business titans sharing how you can manifest abundance, love, joy, success through quantum awakening, quantum manifestation, quantum healing, quantum miracles, exponential business growth, and innovative products and services.
Well, how much time do you have, Lily? We can. No, I'm just kidding. What I'm saying is there's a lot. And the main thing, though, I think for men to focus on is focusing on themselves first. And that's where if we can, fall in love with ourselves, we can, have compassion for ourselves and really be true to ourselves, then we can take our best selves to that committed relationship. And if you're not, taking care of yourself, and if you're not loving yourself, how do you expect to really love someone else in a relationship, right?
Thank you. I love that. And I find that this concept applies to men and women alike. And I find it interesting that you are focusing on men, because I think that a lot of love books are and relationship books are written. And I find that for the most part, it's the women who read them, right? And it's really the men who should read them and try to improve. And what I find a lot of men do is they focus on work and perhaps providing, a brand new car, a bigger house, a maid, and, all the things that they focus on the wrong thing. Because what women want is they want love. But how can you possibly have love if you don't love yourself, right? And I find that It's the same concept for women as well. Like I struggled with self-love for a really long time. And to some extent, I'm still learning to love myself.
It's an ongoing process for sure.
Yes. Yeah. So when you don't love yourself, I think that the impact is really dramatic because first, it's difficult to have a committed, loving relationship. And also it can be difficult even to attract the right clients because you may attract the kind of clients that actually don't love you because you don't love yourself. Would you agree there?
Yeah, absolutely. How you feel about yourself, that energy goes out into the world, so whatever relationship you're in, if you're not really grounded and focused on yourself and how you are, how do you expect that other person to trust you, to believe you? If they're going to do business with you, right, that you want them to trust you. They may like you, but to really do business, they've got to trust you. So you have to trust yourself and that you're coming from a place of integrity and a place of confidence in yourself and who you are. And then you bring that to any relationship.
Thank you. So tell us the blueprint for someone to transform their relationship with themselves so that they can have more self-love and through that to be able to reflect that love onto their partner and through that to have an exciting, amazing relationship that lasts 50 years plus.
Yeah, well, I usually start with most of my clients, I start with self-compassion. And that's something that's pretty much a learned behavior for most of us. We're not raised to be compassionate to ourselves. We're raised to, be compassionate to others. But how often have we been taught to be compassionate to ourselves? So it's understand that it's a learned behavior. So we've got to learn to do it. And I've kind of known about it for decades, but I did a workshop, I guess it was about 9 years ago, in Seattle with a woman named Kristen Neff, Neff. And she wrote a book called Self-Compassion, The Proven Power of Being Kind to Yourself. And I did this workshop, and it absolutely changed my life and how I saw myself and how I saw others. And self-compassion is really about being kind to yourself as you would someone that you love and care about, right? And it's also understanding that there's a sense of community with self-compassion in that you're not alone in whatever you're going through. Most of us, we get into our stuff and we're like, we feel like we're the only ones and nobody can understand and all that. And when we understand that everybody suffers, everybody's going through something at some level, then we can understand that sense of community in others, that everybody is going through something. And then the third component of self-compassion is mindfulness, is to be mindful that you're suffering or you're struggling and to love yourself in spite of it. And so there's a lot of different self-compassion exercises that I offer in my practice. One that I've been doing for a long time is simply writing down every day in the morning 10 things that I love about myself. And it's an easy exercise, but some people have a hard time thinking of 10 things, one thing, maybe two, three, 10. But it could be as simple as, I love that I love the part of me that struggles. There's one right there. Because you got to love that part of you. It's part of you. So you might as well love it and support it versus beat yourself up because you did something wrong or made a mistake, right? It could be, I love how kind, I love my kindness. I love that I'm a good husband. I love that I'm a good father. I love my strength, my masculinity, whatever. You can think of tons of things, but to do it, you may not believe it at first, but to do it on a regular basis, it starts to seep into your subconscious. So you start to, under your subconscious, which controls most of our behavior, starts to respond that way, and you become more loving towards yourself, and you can become more loving towards others. There's a lot of different exercises that Kristen Neff offers, Neff, her last name. She does some meditations. I do meditations about imagine yourself suffering, right? And find it in your body. Where do you feel it? Say maybe you're feeling heavy or depressed, and you place your hands on your heart, and you just sit with it and let yourself feel it, right? And if you don't let yourself feel and we just stuff our feelings, then that's going to show up at some level. It's going to bite you in the butt, whether it's your health or your mental attitude, all kinds of things can be impacted by that. So when you can find where you're having your feeling in your body and notice that first, you don't have to necessarily know what that feeling is, but you know something's not right. You're feeling off, or maybe you do. Maybe I feel sad. So you sit with that sadness. Let yourself feel it. Give yourself comfort with the hands on your body, because when we touch another person or be touched or when we're being hugged, we feel open, we feel supported and loved. And you've got two hands. You can do that to yourself, or one hand, doesn't matter. So it's not only your body, you're soothing your body, but you're also soothing your emotions to let yourself have them. You can sit there and cry. You can get angry and scream at a pillow, whatever you need to do to get it out, and then have compassion for that and understand that it will pass. And for a lot of men, we've been conditioned, nope, we don't do that. We stuff our feelings. We've got to be strong. We can't let ourselves be vulnerable. And that ends up catching up with this. That's why part of the reason why men die a lot sooner than women do on average. So it's part of my mission in working with men is to open them up to vulnerability, to recognize their feelings and know that that is a sign of strength and courage, not a sense of weakness. And most of us have been conditioned, myself included, that, big boys don't cry, and that, we got to stuff it. We can't be vulnerable. And the women that are in my clinical practice are starving for that vulnerability because they love these men and they're not telling them how they feel. She says, oh, you okay? What's wrong? And nothing. And daggone well, something's wrong. And yet she's sitting there, she can't do anything about it because he won't go anywhere with it. And so she gets frustrated. He feels distant because he can't share his feelings. And then you have distance in your relationship.
Thank you. What impact does self-compassion have on a committed relationship?
Well, because as I mentioned, if you're feeling that compassion for yourself, then you can empathize and have compassion for your partner. So, but if you don't, it's, you want to be able to feel that for yourself as well as have that empathy. Put yourself in her shoes and really understand where she's coming from. And so often we as men want to solve the problem, right? And instead of just listening and empathizing. Or if we get feedback from our spouse or partner and they get defensive, the men get defensive. No, I didn't, blah, 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 blah. Instead of saying, oh, well, I'm sorry you experienced me that way. Tell me how I did that so we can clear the air here. So it starts, self-compassion is that self-love, and then you bring that love to your relationship. And to understand it about yourself, you can understand it through your partner.
Thank you.
If that makes sense.
Yes. So I find, for example, my partner Harry is, I would say, almost like a different species, in the sense of being like so vulnerable and so emotional and so open and really like so elevated, like so advanced on so many different levels. And I have never met anyone like him. But awesome. I would say I have met a lot of men, for example, that are emotionally unavailable and also not really able or willing to focus on you, on your emotional needs, on your like even having closeness. I find that emotional unavailability manifests in terms of focusing all their time at work and spending as much time at a distance, and giving you as little time as possible, as little physical contact as possible. And I'm wondering, what is the cause for that, and how can that be fixed? Does self-compassion help with that, or is there something different that will enable men to be more emotionally available, and because of that to have a knock-on impact on creating a loving relationship?
Sure. Well, self-compassion can certainly help. And I think going back to your reasoning why this happens, it's our conditioning. It's how men have been conditioned, for centuries, right? Or millennial. I mean, it's just how we've been raised. And it's understanding that there are better ways. If you want to feel connected in your relationship, you want to have a really fulfilling relationship, then you have to be willing to do the work in order to make that happen. And that can be really scary for men. It can be scary for women too. I mean, it's for all of us. All this, I say to men, it's the same thing for women, but women have been conditioned a little bit differently. So it's a little bit harder of a sell for men to open up to this, being vulnerable and open up their emotions and being open as your partner is. And we're getting that way. We are evolving, yet there's still a lot of work to be done. So the first thing is, are you willing to do the work in order to be in this relationship? And if work is more important to you, if you get that's your satisfaction, or, avoiding conversations and doing these things that you mentioned, then that's not much of a relationship. And what's the point, right? And it just comes down to their priorities as well. And if their main focus is on business, providing and doing all this other stuff, and they want a relationship, well, then they have to do the work to do it, or don't be in a relationship, because you're going to leave if you're leaving your partner high and dry. Like, where's the relationship if you're not involved in it? It's great that you can provide a nice living and all the comforts, but where's the relationship?
Thank you. So what are the steps for someone to become more emotionally available and to become the best version of themselves? What is the next step aside from self-compassion?
Yeah, well, I think it starts there, to be your best self, and then understand that it takes a certain amount of commitment to grow and to look at yourself, to see where you've been in your past, and where are my patterns? What are things like, what keeps showing up over and over that I'm sick and tired of seeing? And a lot of times it has to do with how we've been raised as a child. And if you don't have the awareness of how you were raised has on your relationship, then you're going to keep repeating the same patterns over and over. And I know with me, I'll tell you a little story of my mom and dad divorced when I was about 6 years old, and I went to live with my mother for a couple of years, and then she gave custody to my father, and then she left. I didn't see her ever, and 5 years later, she died of a heart attack. So I never saw my mom after 8 years old. And what I didn't realize at the time was that my mom abandoned me, right? And I didn't find this out until later, after going through different relationships where I always overlapped relationships, because subconsciously I was afraid to be alone or to be abandoned. So I would end the relationship, go to another one, so that I would never be abandoned. And this pattern went all the way through my first marriage, where I was a radio personality, and it was really tempting with women, just to open themselves to me. I did succumb a few times, and not proud of it, but I did. And then subsequently, the one woman that I was with when I was married, I ended up marrying her, my second marriage. And after that is when I realized that, I went to therapy and found out that I had an abandonment issue, and that's why I kept overlapping the relationships. And that didn't happen after that. Once I had that awareness, then I didn't cheat anymore. I was very faithful. And then I ended up with the third marriage, and just to fast forward, that 3 divorces, I was ready to give up on relationships. I'm like, no way. I had done all this personal growth stuff, spiritual growth stuff, and had all these trainings on relationships, and yet I wasn't very successful. And one night I was sitting in meditation, and this kind of message came to me: "It is time." Like Rafiki in The Lion King. "It is time," and this real strong voice. And I'm like, wait a minute, hold up. I once had a 27-room house, and here I am in one room in someone's house. I had 2 kids, and I also had just lost my job. I got laid off my radio job. And I get this push to put my name out there on this website called Conscious Match. And so I was like, I don't look good on paper at all. And, why would I put myself out there? I was ready to live a monk's life, but this message was really strong. So I went for it. And 3 days later, this woman poked at me, and she saw something in me, and we've been together ever since. And it's been over 16 years. And I finally got to put to use all the learnings that I had and experiences that I had to this relationship, and it just keeps getting bigger and better every day. And it was because I did the work on myself. And what I didn't mention in my story is that in my second marriage, when that ended, I was alone in that 27-room house in my living room by myself for the first time in my life, not in a relationship. And I just bawled my eyes out. And that was the beginning of me finding myself and being okay to be alone, to be by myself. I didn't have to be in a relationship, and eventually evolved into the relationship I have today. So that's kind of a long way of answering your question, but I wanted to give that example because I had to work on myself in order to be my best self in the relationship. And once I felt that way, I could go in being confident and knowing that I've done all this work on myself, and it's an ongoing process. It's a lifelong process of personal growth. Yet I knew I was confident enough to bring all the skills and experiences that I had into a relationship, and being my best self allowed me to find the love that I was looking for.
Thank you. How can a man who needs to, sleep with a lot of women, how can he heal that wound if you consider that that wound was caused by his father, who didn't allow him to see too many girls when he was young?
Yeah, well, that certainly could be the cause of that. Wow, now that I'm an adult and I can do anything I want, then just open up the candy shop.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it comes down to, again, what does he really want? Why does he have to be with all these women? Well, if he knows that my dad didn't let me date, then honor that and say, okay, well, just because my dad wouldn't let me date doesn't mean I have to go sleep with all these different women. And it sounds like if it's that need is that strong, that there's an addiction quality there. And if you're addicted to sex and addicted to being with all these different women, then you gotta make a choice. And if you really want to be in a relationship where it's a monogamous relationship and you're faithful, then you have to commit to that, and you've got to do the work in order to heal that part of you that is wanting to avoid. Usually that's what the case is with addiction. You're trying to avoid feeling any pain that you're going through, and it's a way to release that. But if you want a truly committed relationship, and you can't sleep with all these different women unless you have, a partner that is in agreement with that, like a polyamorous relationship where you both agree that, we have an open marriage or whatever. That's a different story. And there's certainly challenges with that as well. But if you are saying you're monogamous and you're, fooling around behind your spouse or partner's back, then, you got to get some help there.
Thank you. What about for men that have an abandonment wound of some sort, whether it was their father or their mother that left them when they were young, and they do something similar where they need to have a lot of women? What do they need to do differently in order to heal that wound and start being in a committed relationship?
Well, in my case, someone who has the abandonment wound, I had to learn to be okay by myself. And that can be really scary to do that work. And I was fortunate to have a really good therapist and did different workshops and things that really allowed that little boy to heal whose mom abandoned him, and learning to take care of the inner child, the little boy inside of me, so that I wouldn't bring that to a relationship. Because when you bring your inner child into a relationship, well, you don't belong in a relationship with an adult. And that's where what happens a lot in relationships is we bring our inner child, this little boy, little girl, and they're going at it because they're not getting their needs met. And most cases they're not aware that that's what's happening. And when I was able to recognize that it's okay to be by myself, I don't have to be in a relationship to be worthy, to be a good person, to, be functional in society and all those things. And I had to learn to sit in that fear and that pain of being by myself. And it takes work, it takes effort, and it takes commitment. And yet it is so worth the effort to do that, so that you can heal and find the relationship that you really want.
Thank you. Why is it that men a lot of times realize what they've done or what they haven't done only after the relationship ended, and only after perhaps a few months have passed? Then it's almost like they have this epiphany of, oh my God, Lily, you are the best thing that's ever happened to me. And then you are the love of my life. But why didn't they know that when I was there? And I'm sure it's similar to me. There are millions of women that experience the same thing where, men focus on work, they focus on, providing, they focus on like so many different things, but they're not focused on you. And it feels like they don't care about you. Maybe the way they want to care is by, being at work and feeling like they do care. But actually, when they're not actually present, they're not physically present, they're not emotionally present. So how can someone heal that so that women like me don't experience that?
Yeah, well, hopefully they've learned from that experience, and that the pain was significant enough to wake them up to be better next time. And, a lot of times in my experience with my women clients, it becomes like water under the bridge. It's just too late to try to turn around. Like, I've been telling you this for years, and you're just not getting it. And then now I'm done. I don't want this anymore. And now you want me. Now you want to change. Well, why did it have to come to that in order for you to change? And, guys, you got to pay attention to what your partner is saying and do something about it then. Don't just blow it off and think it's nothing, or take them for granted that they're going to be there. Well, no, if you don't show up emotionally and not present and all those things you mentioned, Lily, then you're going to get tired of it. It's going to wear thin, and after a while, you start to drift apart, and you're not feeling it anymore. And then all of a sudden, he doesn't have you, and what do I do with that? Well, go get some help. Whether it's through therapy or a coach, friend, go through your maybe it's your religious counselor, whoever, but get some work, read some books, do some things to understand what did I do in the past and what do I don't want to repeat in the future. And how you heal from that depends on your experience and what you've been through. But the big picture here is to get some help, to have someone really there to support you in your transition so that you don't take that old pattern to your next relationship.
Thank you. What are the 10 commandments of a man who wants to become the best version of himself?
Wow, 10 commandments. I don't know. I probably have to think about 10. That's a lot. It's a great question, and I'm a little off guard on that. Self-compassion, do the work, work on yourself, look at yourself, self-reflect on the impact that you may be having on others. Learn how to be vulnerable, how to, share your emotions. And I don't want to say a thing about vulnerability is that it's not always, men think, oh, well, I have to cry and I have to do this to be vulnerable and it makes me weak and all that. And it can be as simple as, say, Lily, you were gone all day and I hadn't heard from you. And so I finally see you and I go, where the hell have you been? I've been trying to call you all day and blah, 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 blah. Well, automatically you're like, whoa. And that's not really being vulnerable. He's just pointing the finger at you and he's mad at you. And what if you were to say, hey, Lily, I was trying to reach you today. I really missed you. And I was just wondering where you were. A little bit different, right? So, and that's being vulnerable. And we don't think of it as something as simple as that. So learning vulnerability is crucial. And then learning empathy, learning how to put yourself in your partner's shoes. And oftentimes it's defensiveness that gets in the way. And when she says, oh, I don't like the way you talk to me, you're yelling at me or something like that. And he goes, I'm not yelling at you. I don't know what you're talking about. Well, he just threw what she said out the window. And if he could stop and pause and say, hey, I can see you're really upset. I'm not sure how I did that. Tell me more. And then she'll be able to take him in, and then she can say something like, well, it wasn't that you yelled at me, it was your tone of voice. Oh, my tone of voice. Tell me how I did that, because I don't want to do that to you. But we as men aren't conditioned to do that. We get defensive. No, we're right. It's right or wrong, and you're gonna win that battle. And when you can just validate your experience, it doesn't mean you're right or wrong. It just means this is what she's going through. So having empathy can take you a long way, and be able to listen without having to solve the problem. And that's another thing that we're conditioned to do. We've got to solve the problem. We can't just hear you out and say, wow, that must have been really hard for you. That's being supportive versus, well, you should go do this and you should go do that. And then all of a sudden you just shut down because he didn't hear you. He's just trying to solve the problem. So those are some really key things to do, and always be open to feedback. Be open to feedback and really take in what she's saying. And again, it doesn't mean that she's right or wrong. It's just that you want to understand where she's coming from. And the same goes for her to understand you and understand where you're coming from before you even try to solve the problem. And when you both feel seen and heard, you're going to be in a better place, much better place to resolve that problem than when you're being defensive and butting heads. So I don't know if I got through 10, but
yes. Tell me, what are the top habits a man entrepreneur should have every day that will enable him to become a better version of himself?
Mm-hmm. I think it starts in a practice I've been doing for quite a while is journaling. And that took me a long time to get my head around it. I resisted it a lot, but every morning I do my 10 reasons why I love myself. Appreciations, that's another thing. I'll be there for her. How do you want to, you can journal out the rest of your day in terms of your business, but in terms of relationship, it's just how do you want to interact with your partner? And start your day with gratitude, being grateful that you have this person in your life. And one thing that I actually, my wife and I put this in our wedding vows, is that we say at least 3 appreciations to each other every night before we go to bed. And that way, it's just, well, there's science behind it, because appreciation is actually good for the person who is appreciating. It opens up your heart, and it does all sorts of good physiological things for you. And think about it, the person receiving an appreciation feels good too. So it's a win-win situation. And, especially if you're struggling with each other, if you're having an argument, it's a way not to go to bed angry. You can appreciate that person even though you're mad, and chances are you're going to deflate that anger that you may be feeling inside. And it sounds corny and everything, but let me tell you, it's a wonderful way to go to bed each night, because you're going to bed on a positive note and you're appreciating the person that you're with. So you may be thinking about your business and all that. If your relationship is your priority, then give gratitude to having that person in your life each and every day, and ask yourself, how can I make her day better? How can I make her life better? What can I do to be there for her? And hopefully she'll do that in return as well. But as far as, the entrepreneur, you've got to create that balance between work, and that's understandable. I get it. I work too. And I've got to force myself to find those gaps to where I can have that compassion for myself and space for my partner as well. That is just as important, or more important than perhaps your work itself. Because if that relationship's important to you, then you've got to nurture it. My wife and I call our relationship a precious jewel that we have to keep shining all the time.
Thank you. Tell us where entrepreneurs can find you and more information about your...
Sure. The best way is to go to my website. It's Men on the Path to Love. And my podcast is right there on that homepage. And you can actually sign up for a free coaching session with me. We talk for an hour. Oftentimes, just that 1 hour to get some clarity can make all the difference in the world. So it's menonthepath-to-love.com, and the podcast is Men on the Path to Love. You can find that anywhere you get your podcasts.
Thank you. Follow us for more interviews with world's most influential business titans, providing you with the insights to awaken to your full potential, so you can get paid to be yourself, find true happiness, and manifest anything you desire.